Welcome back to the Who is Will Sims podcast. Today I've got Chris Mooneyhan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Chris has run, similar circles. You play music. You guys have your podcast. I know you guys aren't doing it as much lately. You've probably been busy with the studio stuff.
We haven't recorded an episode in probably 3 years.
Yeah, and you guys have put out some great music. You've worked with a lot of local musicians. I know recently I was listening through the when I first was chatting with you about coming on. Mm-hmm. I listened through the story time thing again and was, just trying to absorb that and that was really cool. So that was more of like a collaborative thing you did. I think you wrote the music for it and then brought in whoever you felt would work for the songs. I'm right.
Yeah, it's an on-running thing. So I'm more of a composer than a songwriter. I struggle with writing lyrics and writing vocal melodies, but I can write thousands of melodies that work with a song. I've just never had the ability to kind of translate them to vocals, which is why it's wonderful having a partner like Kyle, who everything with him is a vocal approach. That's just what he is, from singer-songwriter, showcases and choral works in high school through college to, just the singer-songwriter acoustic stuff. So Story Hour started out with a lot of songs that I've had just fully built out and fully written for years. And each one of the songs on Volume 1 kind of map a pretty critical moment in my life where there was either a substantial change or just something impactful happened. And so when I got the idea of going after different vocalists, so I laid the scenery, it's their job to tell the story. It really started as a trial for me can I write with knowing that I'm leaving plenty of room for a vocalist, and especially with my mixes and the way that I was approaching the arrangement. And the other side of it is, can I write a song to a certain point and then hand it off and not be a micromanaging egomaniac like I normally am with my songs? Yeah. And so it turned into this really beautiful practice. And the song's theirs. They can do whatever they want for them. The money that I generate in revenue, which isn't much because it's hard as crap to make any money as a composer, let alone a musician. All the money that I make off of Story Hour just goes right into different charities. The Story Hour Volume 1 goes to Luna's House and Bree 379, my two charities. I just split it equally. The next one, Volume 2 that I'm working on right now, I recently lost my best friend who is an amazing guitarist and knew nothing about music theory, nothing about the ins and outs of music, but would blow me away at writing and guitar playing. And he's just always inspiring. Me and him have maybe 12 or 13 different tracks that we never did anything with. So I have all of his original guitar recordings, so I've pulled them back up, and this one's going to be more of an in memory of. And this one I've kind of given the artist a little bit more information on why I wrote the song, as opposed to Volume 1, where they were just given a title and the music. They didn't even have to keep the title. Brad changed his title, Newberry changed his title. All the other ones I think are the same.
Yeah.
So
kind of reminds me when I was enrolled over, Joe would have instrumentals that he had recorded, and so he would even have song titles with them too. And I would I would listen to the song over and over again and just try to get into that headspace of where I thought he might have been where he was writing it. Right. And a lot of times he'd be like yeah, man, what you wrote really I feel captured the emotion of that song, and I think that's quite and it's also an interesting test to the person you're giving it to to kind of see, because I know a lot of the stuff I write, I kind of have an idea of where I want it to go, or I know I want to give it to this person and see what they're going to do it. A lot of times I know, I'm going to go in with Tony and record this, so I'm going to leave room for that expansion, or I'm going to go in with this person, and I feel like they're going to kind of focus in on what it needs to be.
Yeah.
So you got a killer lineup for the first one.
The first
one. Dan and Brad are both great singers, and then Ainsley, Dana and Robin are all amazing vocalists too. And
Robin gave me, like you were saying, is when you give the title and you try and put yourself in that mindset. Robin gave me my favorite vocal line out of any song. And like, I have some big ones, you know, like there's a lot of Floyd songs that like this is the vocal.
Right.
Division Bell. I have favorite vocal lines all over Division Bell. But leading up to, Robin gave me her mother's story, and she's opened up about it and talked about it before. She did on the MOG, and she did on our podcast as well. But her mother was passing away and was going through dementia. And I named the song Can't Get In, because when I wrote the song, it was a good friend of mine and Jan's struggling with drugs. We couldn't get through to him, and we knew he was going to die soon if he didn't stop anything. And eventually he did, but we had to kind of pull away and say, look, you need to figure this out on your own. We're here to help with whatever you need, but we just couldn't get through to him. And she put in, going into the second chorus, the last line of the verse is, the body that you once lived in speaks to the world I can't get in. And that's the only time that you hear the name of the song in it. And when I heard it, I was literally bawling. I had goosebumps on my arms. I called her immediately after, like, sobbing. I was like,
Yeah.
That is beautiful. That is the most amazing thing.
That's so cool, man. Like, I love the idea of it, and like every one of those songs I listened to, I was like, man, you hit the nail right on the head with the person you brought in and their writing.
Yeah, and that was the cool thing, to be able to take a step back. You know, I wrote the songs and I never had an idea of what I could do with them, and so as you know, developing Weatherly Productions, I'm leaning more towards the production mentality than the composer mentality, which I've always had the composer mentality. It's what I've been doing for the majority of my life. And so it was really cool to be able to go back through, and I researched everybody's catalog. I listened to everything that everybody did prior to see how they got to where they're at. And then I completely reproduced all of the songs specifically for them. And the third thing about those is that I wanted to push them. I wanted to give them something that would force them to step out of the box a little bit. And I think for the most part, it was there. Like Dan's track, Drifting Blame, like the amount of harmonies that he sent us, because he recorded his own vocals. We were in the middle of the pandemic when we did it. We recorded a couple were recorded at Deep End. And then I recorded Dana's, which I wasn't supposed to. After I turn over the music, I'm supposed to have a hands off.
Right.
I'm not supposed to hear the song until after Kyle's done with it. But it was really cool to see all the new elements that have now taken kind of place in those artists' future works. You know, some of the stuff that Dan's putting out now, that he's doing a lot of the recording on his own, the harmonies in it are just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing Drifting Blame for the first time, being like, those are the harmonies that I want to hear Dan do. He's just got that wavering voice over the background that really fits to a lot of it.
Nice, man. Yeah, I've heard some of his new stuff, and it's great, and it's cool that he's kind of doing his own thing. I know he's always kind of had some kind of moniker.
Yeah.
But it's neat seeing him do the solo thing. So for the new one, have you locked in anyone yet? Or are you going to bring anyone back from the first one?
I won't do any repeats until we get to probably about 6 or 7.
Okay.
Each one is going to be a little bit of a different genre and different iteration. You know,
Nice.
The first album is very heavily influenced by my influences, my direct influences. It's very Floydian. There's a lot of elements of Seven Dust in it, and then there's a ton of just random classical interjections here and there, which pretty much make up everything that I do that I want to do. The volume 2 is a little more indie. It's a little more raw, a little more organic, a lot of acoustic, more orchestrations, but from like a little chamber group side of things, whereas, you know, Ainsley, me and her put massive orchestrations in there.
Yeah.
Drifting Blame, there's a full orchestra and a piano and a gigantic bell that I really tried to find a real bell so I could just stand in the studio and just bash that thing, but they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, I've seen the videos of her playing piano. Like, she's definitely got that, like, kind of classical style of playing, which I think was probably, like, really cool to have.
And so she did all of her own orchestrations and piano on that song, and it was substantially slower. And then she was working on it a good bit and then reached out to me. She was like, all right, well, you know, I'd really like to speed this song up a little bit and really like to put a lot of orchestrations and piano in it. And my original version was a little faster and had a ton of orchestrations and piano. But my thought process at the time was, I don't want to write another Evanescence song. I've been writing Evanescence songs my entire life.
Yeah.
Between Dream Theater, Seven Dust, Evanescence, Perfect Circle, Tool, like, that's my vein. And they all start to sound the same after a while. But I never had a vocalist like Ainsley on a track like that, where even going that route, which would necessarily kind of sound like an Evanescence song down the road, with her doing her own thing, I don't feel like it was a stereotypical song having that much of arrangements. And she was just getting to the point to where she was back to being able to play a lot more and be able to do those things. So I was like, you know what, we got to seize this opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but she knocked it out of the park.
Nice.
Yeah. So right now I have 4 artists allocated for Volume 2.
Nice.
Like I said, forcing people to step out of their comfort zone. This one's more indie, more acoustic focused, and very ambient. There's a lot of ambient passages. Right now, the ones that are finalized are Megan Lee from Wild Whispers.
Yeah.
And her solo stuff, which is amazing. She's got such a talented... Just her whole persona is just amazing. I love working with Megan. Had to get John on one, so Old Man Jones on an indie track, which kind of got him prepped to start working on the album that we're working on. The new Old Man Jones album in the studio is primarily acoustic, and it's just got some great textures. And he really, over the first 2 albums, he really found his voice. He found his style. He's really honed that in.
Yeah, I haven't done a deep dive yet because sometimes I put stuff on at work and then I'm just like busy working. But I remember listening to it and thinking like, oh, this is so much different than From Nothing, you know. So it's cool to see him, you know, change and evolve like that. So
it has been so much fun working with John. I mean, he's in the studio every week. Me, him, and Kyle have become best friends. I mean, we're his backup band. We're his support band. Anytime he needs us, we do whatever he needs us to do.
Nice.
I play all of his solos live. We did have a recent conversation that with the first album, I'm going to kind of write my own solos over top of where I play live. Second album, I'm going to just continue to play his solos like I did with the first album when we were kind of quote-unquote touring on that album.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's been fun. And Benny Clow, obviously, we just released London Fog, which we did all the production, the recording, and mixing, and he had somebody else master that one. But that album turned out amazing too.
Nice.
It's just Benny just has a unique texture about him as a songwriter and a vocalist. So, yeah.
Cool, man. I'm excited to hear it, and I know you've said at some point you're going to get me on it. I'm
100%.
You know, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, I definitely want to get up there and do something with you guys at some point.
Yeah.
You know, it's always just, I've always got way more projects happening than I should. So I'm always just like, let me just wrap this one up, and then I'll start another one. You know.
Yeah.
I only like in the last couple of years because I kind of had to like take a couple years because I was kind of doing the cover band, and that was kind of scratching that itch to play music. But you know, I was working in event production, and that was kind of like eating up a lot of. It was such a big lifestyle change that it was kind of like making it hard to commit to like you know, working on stuff. And then finally, I kind of felt like I reached a point where I was like, all right, I have an understanding of how this lifestyle works. I'm at the point where like I'm like comfortable with what I have to do, and I know I can say, hey, I'm taking this day off to go to the studio. And then so like about 2 years ago, I started like going back and started knocking out projects and started putting out music again.
Yeah.
And so I'm you know, it's just been one of those things where I've you know, trying to get to that place where I'm ready to like, you know, keep working. But I finally have that momentum going where I'm like getting stuff done and putting stuff out. And so, so hopefully it's only a matter of time here before we make it happen.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that. I'm on the other end of the spectrum right now, is that I started too many projects at once. And up until recently, I was doing the solo acoustic gigging like you guys do.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. I'd never done it before. I'd never really learned. I learned all the twiddly bits behind the things that need to be done. You know, 90s alternative is where I shine. You get like bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Tonic and Counting Blue Cars. There are so many amazing guitar parts buried in those mixes that you don't hear unless you're familiar with them live.
This song came on the other day, and I got to look it up real quick, but it was by Tonic. It just kind of came on random in my car, and it was from that, Casual Affair.
Casual Affair.
And I was just like,
amazing.
I was just like, holy crap, how have I not like just listened to this? Because I love If You Could Only See so much. It's like I really need to go through and listen to that whole album and just like,
yeah.
You know,
Those auxiliary guitar parts and If You Can Only See are some of my favorite things to play.
Yeah.
There's some of my favorite things to play.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of I grew up in that realm of the 90s stuff, so I had like a lot of the Matchbox records and the Goo Goo Dolls and Green Day and stuff like that we'd all listen to here.
Yeah.
What were, so I usually like to go back. I usually like to say, like, what were some of those first records that you remember having that were like, that kind of really got you into music?
Yeah. The records that got me into music, I started music at a very, very young age. My oldest brother, Johnny, born with perfect pitch. I don't remember him the majority of my childhood. He's a decade older than me. So when I was 6, 7 years old, Johnny was in 3 different magnet programs and Maryland State Youth Orchestra, and then he went to Europe he was in Europe for about 6 months playing euphonium in a couple orchestras. But I remember coming home and him and my brother Nick, who was the drummer of Old Man Jones up until recently, he had to have shoulder surgery, so he's out of commission for a while. It was a lot of fun being able to play in a band with him for the first time in our lives. He was Weatherly's drummer as well. But I remember coming home from school, and Johnny had just it was his 16th birthday, and Johnny had just got the 25th anniversary Gibson Les Paul for his birthday. And I remember walking downstairs, and him and Nick were sitting there playing Plush. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so I'd gotten into the habit of starting to sit down and listen to them, but I had already started playing the trumpet at this point, and trumpet was my life for so many years. And then they started a band and had this guitarist, Robbie McDonald, who is I probably credit him to being my second biggest influence, second to David Gilmour. You watch Robbie play, you watch me play, same exact mannerisms.
Yeah.
Like, I adapted my whole style, the auxiliary guitar approach, playing the chords and making sure it's there. But my guitar parts, I like my guitar parts to be either self-sufficient, where they stand alone by themselves, so nothing else is going on, but also have the room that they can work well with somebody else's. If I don't have both in the guitar part that I'm writing, then I don't personally deem that my guitar part's good enough.
Yeah.
So their band 6/10, that was the 90s church scene, going into a church or a synagogue at 9 o'clock at night, and a metal band and a rock band playing. That was my whole childhood. So it's all the bands that came from there. I've always migrated more towards local music than anything. And back then, the local bands were Bionic Man and Spineshank and 6/10, and bands that some of them have gone off to do great things. I got to go to Jackson, Springfield, and watch my brother open up for Nile and Morbid Angel before anybody really knew who Nile was, with a death metal band that he was playing in, 40 Days Longing. Fantastic band. That stuff's on YouTube as well. Crappy mixes, but it's still really good stuff. But listening through them, I got really, really big into ska. So I was listening to like Ska-Kaholics and Big Bad Voodoo Daddies, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, and focusing more on trumpet until Johnny came home with a VHS tape of Dream Theater live in Tokyo. And I watched John Petrucci play the guitar for the first time. And the next day that they had band rehearsal, after band rehearsal, I went up and I talked to Robbie, and I was like, hey, you think you can hang out for 30 minutes? Now, I could have had my brother Johnny do this, but Robbie was my influence. Johnny was a rhythm guitarist and then later on played bass for him and stuff. Johnny was always a versatile musician. But Robbie knew what he wanted to do. He knew his style. He knew how he was going to get there. And that was the influence that I wanted. So after that, I pretty much listened to everything that he listened to. That got me into Seven Dust big time. One of my favorite bands. Lejean's vocals are everything that I want in music. it paved the way for me to get heavier into Tool and Perfect Circle coming out, stuff like that. And then really anything 90s alternative. Played hockey listening to Sponge and, like I said, Counting Blue Car or Dishwalla. Yeah.
When did you start playing trumpet? Like, was that like one of your first
I started
instruments?
playing trumpet at the age of 5 is when I picked up a trumpet for the first time. 12, I was principal chair for Maryland State Youth Orchestra.
Nice.
And then I went straight to, I got into a little bit of trouble in Maryland public schools and had to leave Maryland. So I went to Virginia, went back to high school, made up 4 years of high school in 2 years, and then straight to Shenandoah Music Conservatory, composition major with trumpet performance. But I mostly focused on jazz trumpet. And now by this time, I had started playing guitar, I would say probably 8 or 9. But I had no formal training. But I could play a lot of classical stuff because of guitar tabs and Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
Like, D was the first classical song that I ever learned how to play. Not really a classical song. It's on a metal album.
Yeah.
So I tried to kind of migrate playing the guitar in college as well, but that wasn't for me. I couldn't find my place in like a classical guitar ensemble or anything like that. So that was around the time that I had made the shift into composition, and part of being a composition major means that you got to learn the inner workings of a studio and splicing tape and all the stuff like that. So I started bringing my guitar instead of my trumpet into the studio, and I've had to take so many piano classes, and as a composition major, like, you were required to take piano classes every semester, and I'm a terrible pianist. Like, I should be way better at piano than I am because of how much I had to train on piano for composition.
Right.
But the guitar in the studio just seemed so natural to me, and it was around that time is when I truly figured out my own style. And I stopped, relying on just trying to sound like somebody else or try to write a riff because somebody else wrote a riff like this. And from there, I've been exposed. The exposure to music and the music that I listen to is just, even my girlfriend comes in sometimes and I'll have a record on and she's just like, what are you listening to? I'm like, something different. Right now we're on a hip hop kick. My kid wants to listen to a lot of hip hop, and I'm like, all right, well, here's the new guys that are paving the way for things, and it's like real hip hop, good hip hop, not crap mumble rap. That's not hip hop.
Yeah,
like real hip hop has progressions and things like that. And so I kind of took him back in time, and I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna listen to Naughty by Nature. We're gonna listen to House of Pain, Cypress Hill, some of it not, because he's only 10. And then I got him into like Swollen Members and AC Alone and some of that Midwestern hip hop from like the late 90s that never really, I don't think it never got enough credit as it was. I listened to a lot of Norah Jones, a lot of Dave Matthews, a lot of classical, a lot of death metal.
Nice. And so like, when did you, it seems like you've been playing music your whole life. When did you start like kind of playing out, and like, did you join a band, or did you kind of like start doing I know you're doing solo gigs now too.
I have 4 gigs booked for this entire year, and that's it. I play at Jayville every chance I get because it's home, and I bring a lot of people out to me with Jayville, and it turns into a really good night for everybody. All my people really take care of the staff there, so they love the me just coming in every once in a while. But even through high school and college, my extent of playing out was, musical pit orchestras. Even if I was playing guitar in musicals in the pit or whatever chamber group I was playing in, I never really played out with rock bands. I never played out solo acoustic up until recently. But I was working on my master's 2005, 2006. And I had just finished my undergrad, and my father got sick. And so me and my oldest brother left what we were doing and took over my father's company. I spent the next 9.5 years on the road installing commercial kitchen equipment across the country. Didn't have a house. I lived out of an F-150 in a hotel, in hotel rooms with an open-ended expense account just to get the jobs done. All my mail was sent to Florida, and when I wasn't on the road working, I would just pick a random state and be like, you're going to go here for the next month or two, and I would find just a little crappy apartment to rent somewhere. And then in 2012, I moved back to Maryland and came off the road and got married and getting ready to have a son, and something was just missing. The whole time that I was on the road, I had an acoustic guitar with me, and I would go in and do a couple open mic nights where I would play the same 4 songs that I've ever learned how to play and sing by other people. And I was Lucky by Seven Mary 3, 41 by Dave Matthews, Nutshell by Alice in Chains, and then a couple of the 90s alternative things. If You Can Only See. It's the same 4 chords over and over again for the song, pretty much. You just strum a little differently. And then when I came back in, I was like, all right, I need to do something. I have 3 degrees in music and a master's in orchestral conducting, and I do nothing with music but twiddle on a couple 4-chord tunes. This is not me. I can't breathe anymore. So I had talked with my wife, and I said, look, I want to invest and get some gear back up. Back before I stopped playing, I was playing through a Jackson with a Crate Blue Voodoo and a Metal Zone. That's where I want to start. And I found a band that was auditioning for a new guitarist, and I went to join them. Normandy Wood with Mike and those guys.
I was going to say that's the first time I think we met was Normandy Wood, and I think Kyle was playing with them
guitarist.
too.
Yeah. So me and Kyle's paths cross a lot over the last 20 years, and we didn't know it. So I came in to replace him at Normandy Wood, and we worked together for my audition. And we may have worked on Normandy Wood stuff for like 10 minutes. And Kyle was like, all right, you obviously can play all these songs. So what else do you want to do for the time being? So I came in to replace Kyle with Normandy Wood, and we worked on the music for maybe 10 minutes. And he was like, all right, you got this stuff. It'll be fun. We're going to play one show together, and then I'm leaving, and you just take my spot, and then I'll send you a recording of just all of my guitar parts so you have them for reference. And we spent the next, 45 minutes just randomly writing songs, and I had maybe a month and a half, 2 months of trying to get my chops back up at that point, because before I put the electric guitars down and got rid of all of my gear and went on the road, I spent, 14 hours learning how to play Cliffs of Dover from start to finish. I learned Dream Theater scenes from a memory for the most part, start to finish. When Petrucci starts getting in those 64 tuplets and those runs, I would just flub them and, do what I could to them. But when I came back into it, my chops just weren't that. I didn't have the dexterity anymore. I damaged my hands too much welding and fabricating and stuff those were things that I would never be able to do again. So working with Kyle on this Normandy Wood stuff, I really was able to find where my place is as a musician again and where my writing style is strongest. And that pretty much migrated me back to Pink Floyd and David Gilmour's style and a lot of guys like that. So shortly after Kyle left, we played that one song together, or played that one concert together at Fishhead Cantina.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time you and I met in person, was there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I was thinking because Kyle's band before was Screams and Whispers, and I was like, was he in that band? And I just didn't
but there's
remember,
a funny story about Screams and Whispers,
which
I don't think you and I have had that story because I'm pretty sure you came in and out of that venue too. We'll get to that one. It's a really funny story. So a month after Kyle left, I pretty much left Normandy Wood for the same reason. And the night that I was leaving Normandy Wood, Kyle called me and told me that he bought a house in Bel Air, and I've only known the guy for a month, and he's like, I need help moving this weekend. What are you doing? And I was like, I guess helping you move this weekend. And he's like, so what are you doing right now? And I was like, well, I just left band practice. You know, I talked with Mike and Tim, who are wonderful musicians and wonderful guys to work with.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me. I didn't want to do the backing track things. I have multiple degrees in music composition. The challenge for me would be able to take 2 guitar parts and turn them into one. And the things that you don't hear are implied. The things that you do hear are the things that are meant to be there. And that night that I helped him move, like we set up his kids' room stuff, we set up him and his wife's room with stuff, and then we went downstairs into the basement and we immediately set up music gear, recorded the first episode of the podcast talking about, you know, what are we going to do now that both of us have no projects to do. And we wrote the first album, and still I was that auxiliary guitarist. I was that guy sitting next to, I could be off stage for all I care. And then it wasn't until the pandemic that I was like, you know, there's still a lot of things that I haven't done with music. I go out and I support you guys. I see so many different live musicians in their sets to just try and support and help bring attention, because there's so many talented musicians around this area. But that's something that I always wanted to do. And I don't want to do all the songs that everyone else does. I want to do the nostalgic songs. I want to do the songs that are like, oh my God, I haven't heard that song in ages.
Right.
You know, so like, You'll Be in My Heart from Tarzan is like my staple.
That's literally on my list to learn. I love that song.
It's such a great song. My version of Billie Jean that I kind of adapted is wonderful. I do Hit Me Baby One More Time, Britney Spears. I do a bunch of Spice Girls, and it's fun because it's still great music. The production that people listened to back then, a lot of us didn't like. Like, you won't see me listening to a Spice Girls album, but the song itself is written beautifully.
Yeah.
Wonderful writing. So those are the things that I wanted to showcase. And so literally 2021 is when I started I spent 6 months getting gigs together, and then I figured I was just going to go hard my first gig. I did an outdoor gig for 4 hours in the middle of summer. I was like, if I can do that, then I can get through anything.
Yeah.
And then, so I did it straight for 2 years nonstop, and it's exhausting. It's so tiring. I don't see how you and Newberry and Dan and Edgar and all those guys, like, y'all are workhorses.
You kind of have to live it, but
and to keep that endurance up, if I took 1 week off of a gig and then I played the next week, I felt twice as worse, because I didn't have that endurance built up. You've got to practice even more in between the time that you're taking a rest from gigging. And that's just a foreign concept for me. I'm used to just kind of showing up in the studio and grabbing my guitar and somebody being like, we want this, this, and this. And I'm like, all right. And I give them like 3 takes, and then I leave. I'm done. You know, half the time now, I don't even have to go in the studio. Kyle just sends me a stereo mix, and he's like, hey, John wants slide lap steel on this one, do something. In 15 minutes, I send it back, and they're like, great, thank you. So, but Screams and Whispers. So the first night I met Kyle to audition for Normandy Wood and work on the music, he went up to tuck the kids in, and I was flipping through CDs, and I picked up a Screams and Whispers CD, and I was like, hey man, I love these guys. I used to run sound for them all the time in the early 2000s at Brass Monkey. I was the main sound engineer at Brass Monkey from 2004 to probably 2008, maybe.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I ran the Sunday Metal Fest all the time. I have had to have run sound for you. I mean, you're one of the names that pop up of coming in and out of Brass Monkey all the time.
Yeah, I played there one time. It was with my band. We were called Vinyl Descent. And it was probably closer to like 09.
Okay.
Like 2009, 2010. Because 08 was when I first like started playing with a band. And that was first started playing with people, but like we didn't really play out much. But yeah, we did one gig there. You know, it was at the time like I didn't have any of the connections. So it was like the fact that we had a gig, we were like, all right, you know. And it was this was after Fletcher's closed, I think, too. I might be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when Fletcher's closed.
I'm just trying to think, because I think I was over at there. Maybe Fletcher's was still open, but I feel like I went over there for a little bit, and then I came back to do this set, and it was like there was this band that was playing that night, and they had a bunch of people there. And then, like, I don't know why they set the show up this way. It was us, it was this band, there was a solo guy, and then there was our band.
Weird.
And so they had this one band play, and it was like packed. And then the solo guy went up, and they were like, "Oh, this guy's from this band that's like a big deal." But the guy playing solo was like not. He did not sound great.
Yeah.
Like he didn't. I think it was more like a pitch thing. Like his pitch wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
And like everybody left, and then like
you're
we
left
played
to
last
nobody.
and played to like nobody, and we were just like, whatever,
Yeah.
glorified practice, but. But yeah, that was our only experience, and I don't think it was open much longer after that. Like I wouldn't mind going back and playing a place like that, but it's just like, it's just one of those things where, at the time we were just trying to break into some places, and I knew I'd driven by it like a million times and been like, sounds like a fun place to play.
Yeah, I definitely had some enjoyable moments. I mean, my band back then, after the ends, we played there, every like 2 or 3 months. And I would bring in one of our guys to sit at the soundboard for when I was playing. So it's probably the place that I played at the most back then. I never got to play 8x10. I never played Fletcher's. I played Wrecker once for a Battle of the Bands just as a fill-in guitarist. I wasn't even a part of the band, but they couldn't back out. They were in the Battle of the Bands. So I learned all the guitar parts and just played that one show with them. And then their guitarist was back for the next round. I think they won that year.
Nice.
They might have won that year. They were a pretty solid band.
You got them kicked off too. You got them through the first round.
Yeah. No, I barely got them squeezing by. That other guitarist was fantastic.
All right, cool, nice.
His guitar parts were tough.
Yeah. I've done a lot. I've done like the like the physical Battle of the Bands, and now they're all about like the online Battle of the Bands things. But like I did the one at 8x10 a few times. With a few different bands, it can be fun sometimes, but it can also be like a little toxic.
Yeah.
But
I prefer the supportive community over like the battles, and I don't even really like the online things because I find it hard to believe that you can get 1,000 people to vote for you, but you only have 40 streams on the album that you're getting people to vote for you. They're just voting for you because they can and they can support you, which is wonderful, but they're supporting you. They're not supporting your music. So to me, it's just biased.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be doing one soon here. There's a festival coming up in Annapolis called the Let's Go Music Festival. And it's got a really great lineup, but there was like I can't remember how I submitted, but I think it was just like an online form, and I got picked of one of 16 finalists to do this Battle of the Bands thing, and it was like, usually when I do them, it's like, oh yeah, like you can play at the Hard Rock Cafe on a Thursday, and it's like, but this is like a chance to open the festival, so I'm like, I might have to actually try for this one. Usually I'm just like, hey, if whoever can vote, whatever, no big deal. But now I'm going to be like, please go vote.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's definitely an element of like, it's like you get people that like have no streams and they're getting thousands of likes, or you get like, like some band, sometimes you just get like a band that like it's like me by myself trying to get a bunch of people, whereas like you're going up against a band that has 4 people that everyone's like, please vote for me. And then, but like, my thing with that is like, it's always some band that wins, and then like a month later they break up, and it's like I have a whole catalog, like this would actually really benefit me.
Yeah.
So it's always like that trick of making it happen.
Yeah. That's why I like the concept that you have, and Newberry, and with Brad's new project, Veteran Avenue, Old Man Jones. Like me and Kyle, we are not Old Man Jones band. Yeah. We are Old Man Jones support. John has a lot of support. You have a list of guitarists and drummers and bass players that you can bring in when you need to. Same with Veteran Avenue. I'm on a Veteran Avenue track. Jamie Bishop's on a Veteran Avenue track as a drummer, which is amazing. It was such a fun track to work on. But I feel like you guys having like that, being the solo guy and having the support that you need is more beneficial than being a legit band from the music standpoint and from the diversity standpoint. But having a full band, you have 4 guys that are being like, hey, we're all invested into the same thing. So it's now 4 against 1, basically.
Yeah, that's and like the thing I love about it too is like it kind of gives me the chance to work with different people, which is always like the more people you work with, the more you learn. Like you kind of it's always
100%.
it always kind of pushes you to grow. But the other thing I love about it too is like I think it works out for a lot of people where like when you were in a band before, if you did a show, it was like, all right, everybody, we all got to work together to make this show a big deal. Now it's like, I just need you to come play drums for this set.
Yeah,
like,
know your part.
Like you don't, and maybe share a post here and there, but like, I don't need you to like, I'm not going to hand you 10 tickets and be like, you got to sell these 10 tickets. Like,
Right.
So I think it kind of opens that door for people to just kind of have more fun with it.
Yeah.
Which is nice. But yeah, man, like I was just talking with someone. I just had this guy Matt Poth on,
Yeah.
sorry, Matt Poth.
Both, yeah.
And
I love his stuff.
and yeah, his stuff's really great.
love his stuff.
And I was asking him like, do you have like guys to play with? And he was like, no, that's actually one of the struggles I've had. I was like, that's kind of the benefit I had from playing in bands for years, is a lot of people got to see me perform.
Yeah.
And so like when I went to people and said, hey, like, can you help me play on this track? They were like, yeah, man, I'd love to. Like, I like your stuff.
Yeah.
So it could just kind of worked out that way where,
Yeah.
and like, it's funny too, because, even starting like to do this podcast, one of my favorite things is like, I know all these people, but I feel like I don't know anything about them, because you always just see them when you're out and you're just kind of like, hey man,
Right.
how you doing? Like what you been up to? And it's like, and then they're like, all right, I got to go talk to someone else. And it's like now I get to just sit down with people and learn more about them and like what their journey's been like and stuff. And I'm sure it was the same with you guys when you started the podcast too. Like you've had a lot of great people on.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Because, I mean, when me and Kyle go out to do things and go out to shows and stuff, we're working. We're networking. We're marketing. We're trying to build Weatherly, That's just... back then, we didn't quite know what Weatherly was going to be. It didn't turn into a production studio until 3 years after its inception.
Yeah.
And then more recently, so we're more of an actual studio than a production company. But it was always hard to, like you said, get to know people, get to actually know people outside of their music, get to know, what they do in their day to day and what their routines are, or their influences and inspirations. You get to kind of get a little bit of it from their music when you're out, but you're going from one group to another and trying to make your rounds around the room.
Yeah.
And the podcast really allowed us to develop some beautiful relationships with people. I mean, the first time that we had Brad on our podcast like 4 times for 4 different reasons.
Yeah.
And Brad has become one of our close friends. We're currently getting to work with Brad in the studio in Weatherly, a nice little collab between Deep End and Weatherly, which is wonderful because Tony Corelli's the man. I don't like that I'm going against him for a Maryland Music Award.
Right.
But the fact that I'm nominated for a Maryland Music Award is amazing.
That's cool, yeah. I've seen that stuff pop up every year, and I'm always like...
We were so surprised. We were dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's John and Benny. John and Benny are both on the list for Maryland Music Awards, and we were allowed to work with them. We were allowed to be a part of their vision and what they created. And I feel like between that and a little bit of Story Hour, that was the one that was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. So, but it's been a lot of fun working with Brad in the studio because, I mean, I've worked with Brad at Deep End, but we've never produced with Brad. We've never taken one of Brad's songs and here's our take on it. And it'll be released soon. We just wrapped up the final mix to it. And it's a great song. It's fun. It definitely had its challenges because we're used to working with an artist for a couple sessions. And as we work on building this album, and then as we get further through, we figure out our processes, we figure out what works and what tones and what arrangements that we're going with, and then we can always go back and adjust the earlier ones to reflect what we're doing currently. Working with a new artist like Brad, who's very methodical and he has a vision, he knows how he wants it to sound in his head. This was a fun challenge for us because it's just, one session, then right to the mixing. We got to get it done this time. And it definitely caused us, we needed to take a couple different approaches to mixing. Kyle took the first pass, and it was a pretty big consensus that, yeah, it sounds great, but it doesn't sound what the song should sound like. And so then I took a pass in mixing, and then it got us a little bit closer. My approach is just different than Kyle's, and this is why we always say that me and Kyle is like, that's why there's two of us. That's why we're a duo. If I can't do it, Kyle can do it. If Kyle can't do it, I can do it. And that's the way it's been since day one with us.
Nice.
Yeah, so
What's like a song of anyone of the ones you worked on where you were like, start off one way, but like you were like really surprised at how like well it turned out or how differently it turned out? Like any songs come to mind like that? I know I have a couple that were like that.
With other artists or with me and my
It could
Kyle's
be either or.
So with other artists, I would say Hall of Illusion off of Benny Clow's London Fog. It's one of the last tracks.
Nice.
It's right after Broken Arrows, which Broken Arrows was one of the... I feel like Broken Arrows is my favorite guitar part that I've ever written. Like my solos and that, all the auxiliary guitar parts, I spent a lot of time on that. I probably have about 2 weeks of honing just little short passages in, but it's such a big song that it needed those. But when we started working on Hall of Illusions, I didn't like it. My stance was I was going to veto the whole song off the album and be like, I feel like your writing's better than this. But we just didn't have enough material to understand what Benny's vision was.
Yeah.
And then I think I went out of town. I missed a couple studio sessions, and I came back, and we were already at the mixing process, and me and Kyle are sitting there reviewing, and I listened to Hall of Illusions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best song on the album.
What did you guys do while I was gone?
This is my song on the album, and it's the one that I go to. Like it's in my playlists of whatever, like my cleaning playlist or my cooking playlist. It pops up pretty regularly, more so than Broken Arrows does, and Broken Arrows is probably my favorite guitar part. But that one probably had the biggest change, and it just goes to show, not every producer and artist match. And that's something that me and Kyle try to constantly keep into consideration, is that we might not be the best fit for artists, just as artists might not be the best fit for us. We haven't walked away from a project, or we haven't turned away a project other than for the sake of time. This is our side job. We both have careers and families. So there is a limitation on time that we have in the studio. But this one was one that I was like, I just don't see it happening. I really don't see it happening. And Kyle had his reserves about it, and Benny had his about it as well. And at that point, Benny is a workhorse when it comes to writing. Benny will write and write and write, and he will just throw as much crap as he possibly can to see what sticks. And one thing that me and Kyle are really, really good at are taking, which I feel like I've trained Kyle over the years to do this, because I give him so many different parts and so many different layers. And I'm just like, keep what you want, get rid of what you don't, let me know if something else should be a new song. And so he's gotten really good at going through and picking out, out of all those layers, what needs to happen here to make the song? Like, what does the song need? And when they did that with Hall of Illusion, I was just blown away. It's just a powerful song, and it sounds great. My biggest concern was I was worried about the mix. It's dense. There's a lot of parts in that. There's a lot of thick key arrangements in that song. So
that's cool, man.
For me and Kyle, your Listen Why. It was the last song that we wrote. We got bored. Kyle sent me a guitar part and was like, hey, I like this. We should do something with this. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not going to write what we've normally been writing. I'm going to write something completely like avant-garde or abstract and send it to him. And I have 3 different delays going on at once, so I can get like my like pingy. I got like one of them set at like, so it sounds like it's a dotted half or dotted quarter, one set, so it's a quarter triplet, so it makes the dotted sound like it's a dotted quarter eighth. And then I have one that's faster that does the same, that makes it sound like a dotted eighth 16th. So you have a lot of different delays going. I could probably done it with one delay pedal and just like fine-tuned it or grab one of my random plugins to actually give it a pattern. But it was I just wanted to use this song as kind of an experiment. And once I did that and I sent him a guitar part that's like heavily phased and finger tapping and all this other stuff, he was like, "Oh, that's amazing. I love this. I'll work on it next." And so he started working on drums and doing like a bunch of different other production things. And really we were working on the song just as a not even a joke, but just to how many different things that we can do that are not in our wheelhouse or not in our toolbox to a single song, and just practice those elements. And by the time we were done, we were like, well, one, we would never be able to play this live. I would need 4 guitars. Like, I would literally need 4 guitars to play.
Well, that's the challenge, man.
That's
How do you make it work?
Yeah. And Kyle was like, yeah, I would probably never be able to sing that in the strumming pattern and also be able to do there's like some breath, like weird noises in there that we kind of changed so they sounded like raking of cymbals, but a little bit more organic and a little bit breathier, and without the transient of that actual like initial strike of the cymbal, because that was clashing everything at the time. And by the time it was done, we were like, well, hell, I'm going to start working on artwork. Let's release it. And we released it, and it's still not my favorite Weatherly song, but it's up there.
Yeah.
Just because of what we were able to do in such a short time. We literally wrote the song start to finish in 3 nights using elements that we never used before in the studio or as musicians.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I've had a couple songs where, especially when I was doing like Lovesick and My Airs were recorded at the same time.
Yeah.
Basically, I would do is I came in and I gave that guy Chris like a bunch of demos, and then I would leave for a week, and I'd come back a week later, and he'd be like, "I worked on this, this, and this," and like sometimes, you know, I'd just be like, "Wow," like I was not even anticipating like the direction this song would take. You know, I think Lovesick was one where I was just playing like some chords, and he kind of came up with like the kind of like the guitar playing style on it, and the and like added the organs and stuff, and I was just like wow, like I was not anticipating the direction this would turn out.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's always like the fun of being in the studio is like that surprise. You guys, is Weatherly working on any stuff? You guys got anything?
Not really.
Just been focused on recording some other people?
Yeah, I mean, we have, there's a lot of facets to Weatherly Productions. We do a lot of different things. Weatherly, the band itself, we only do things when we have charity events coming up. You know, Luna's House, Bree 379, any other charity event that people want us to do, we will donate all of our services to charities. Whatever anybody needs, we will do. That's something that we've always kind of taken our pride on. And in turn, like a lot of the work that we did with Bree 379 in the beginning, setting up the events and finding the musicians and stuff, one, helped us network with a lot of great musicians. Dana comes up and does the Bree 379 stuff with us all the time. They love her there. She's usually my feature. Like, I usually have her headlining and close out the night, because that's what you do when you have Dana on a bill.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do.
You say, here, Dana, it's your show. Yeah. We're going to support you.
She's amazing. I was lucky enough to have her do my album release, you know, and I was like, you know, and she was great. Everyone loved her.
Yeah, she did our album release, too, but with the Dead Pens.
Yeah.
The original band. We did have Vagabond.
Yeah, man, if you're ever doing anything like that, keep me in mind. Like, I'm happy to come
100%.
play, and I'll try to get, like, whatever accompaniment I can to come do it, you know?
Yeah. And so lately, especially with the award nomination, we've gotten a lot more traffic, a lot more bands that want to come work with us.
Nice.
Our old bass player, Colin, he was our bass player of Weatherly, and then he became our bass player with Old Man Jones. Since then, Kyle's taken over bass for Old Man Jones Live, and Colin started a band with some old friends of his called Made for Meteors. We're tracking 4 albums. Their logo is cool as hell, too. They're tracking 4 songs in the studio. Friday night, we did final vocal tracking, which was a lot of fun because they also had, you know, the girlfriends and the wives come in for that session. And when you do a band with a lot of harmonies, you get to have a lot of fun with it, because not only do you track their harmonies individually, but then you just throw a bunch of omnis in a room and let everyone sing.
Nice.
You know, when you start layering those, tuning doesn't really make a difference anymore. You're just filling the room with sound, and it normally sounds really good. So we got to play around with that a little bit and have some fun, but they're outstanding. And this is one of the first times that we get to really dial in tracking drums in the new space. We've had the drums set up, we've had mics on them. Me and Kyle have done our own trials and our own tests. We've tracked a couple of the Old Man Jones rehearsals when Nick was in there practicing, and we're getting some great results. But this time it was really cool to have like a legit drummer with an intent sit down so we could really dial in, and everything that we're getting out of our room just sounds so great. I love
awesome.
hearing the final products. Even just the raw recordings that come out are so close to like finished product that we don't have to overmix things anymore. We don't have to clean up a lot of stuff like we were when we were just running a home studio. Our studio is still in our home, but now after 8 years, we've invested a lot of money into our home studio. So we're doing a lot of mixing and mastering work for other clients. We have a couple of hip-hop guys that just send us their stuff, and we do a little bit of mixing, mostly mastering, just get it ready. So when Spotify and YouTube and all them do their stuff to it, it doesn't destroy the integrity of the song.
Yeah.
We recently get to work with this indie. They're like indie Americano. Just more like country songwriting, but the good country songwriting, called First Lights. It's Shane Grimm. He's a Hartford County guy.
Nice.
He was actually one of the original guitarists for Everwatt. And now he does this really indie eclectic stuff with a partner of his. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. They record their own stuff, and they send us some of the most beautifully recording tracks. So we get to really have a lot of fun putting the mix together. And they wound up playing around with this EDM remix of one of their songs and sent it to us to mix and master. And I was really surprised at how well it turned out. It was just a fun, quirky idea that they wanted to see what would happen. And I almost like it better than the original. The original is great because they got like this Bob Dylan kind of soul vibe going on, but it's got those like City and Color kind of more in what like indie music was becoming in the early 2000s.
Nice, man. Sounds exciting. I'm happy you guys are continuing to make music, and like I said, I hope to be able to come up there and work with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometime soon. Before we wrap up, I have like a couple just fun questions.
Nice.
Like trying to like have like a little fun way to wrap up the whole thing. So some of these are music based, some of them were just like goofy what if questions.
Cool.
So all right, so first one is, what is your music fantasy? Like if a band was like, oh man, like our guitar player is sick, or like something along them lines,
I want to conduct an orchestra with a film score that I wrote while the film is being played above in
nice.
Kennedy Center. I've done everything else inside of Kennedy Center except for conduct.
That's really cool.
That's my
I've seen a
goal.
few, like I know that I think Tony went and saw some kind of Radiohead one that was really cool. But I've seen where like we're gonna play the soundtrack to Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah,
and I'm always just like, dude, I want to go to that. Like, but like that is really cool though.
Yeah, so that's number one.
All right. Is there a song you thought you knew the words to, but then you learned that they were different from what you thought?
All right, so I'm going to pick two of them. We had a really funny story from Friday night from the vocal tracking. Is I did all the scratch tracking for them in the beginning at my studio. So I just got all the directories built out, did some scratch vocals, just enough that everybody could do their parts to when we got them into the studio for the track-by-track stuff. And the mixes of those turned out great. They were great demos. So I've been listening to them. They're fun songs, and I've been singing them over and over. And the Joe, the vocalist, says this one line. He says, what I thought he would say, I like to dance. But it's not. It's I like to dare. And the whole time that we were tracking it, I kept telling him, like in the studio Friday night, and I'm like, all right, well, look, dance, you really got to lift up on that sibilance quicker because it's, getting drowned out by the cymbals. You want to shorten that word. I like to dance and get rid of the syllable quicker. And he was like, what are you talking about? I say dare. And I was like, Okay, then we need to accentuate the R and shorten that up a little bit more. And he sings the line and he shortens it up, and I pull my headphones down. I was like, am I the only one that still hears dance?
Yeah.
I would say that one recently, which was funny, is a short one. But I would say I would say there's probably about 4 or 5 Elton John songs that I would sing from start to finish and that I love, and I would sing all those words purposefully, and 60% of them probably aren't the right words that he's singing.
Yeah, I don't know. The song that I've been like fixated on in that regard is "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
There's just something in like the chorus where he's like, "Keep up with the good stuff.
Yeah.
Don't stop till you get enough." And I'm like, is he saying keep on with the porn stars?
Right.
I'm just like, I'm listening to it, but and then when you like look online, like, I don't know if it's just like a music, like, you know, if he's not really saying anything, but there's nothing like written out that's like, oh, that's what he's saying. But I'm just like, it sounds like he's saying something there, but I can't quite make it out. But
it's like Lady Gaga, Poker Face.
Right.
Like, I mean, it took a while before she came out and she was like, yeah, the radio station will not play this song because they are actually right. No one else says. She doesn't say Poker Face throughout the entire song. She changes Poker Face into something else in 4 sections of the song.
Huh. I have to listen to that song.
I don't think we can say it on a podcast.
Yeah, I'll go check that out.
Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite toy or game when you were younger?
Favorite toy or game? I came from a very poor family. We used to have the electricity cut off a lot. So I'd come home from school, and me and my brother would walk into a dark house. But some of those nights are like the most memorable nights that I have because we would light candles. My father would put batteries in the radio. We'd put on a hockey game, and everybody would just sit there and play games. And it was the only time, 3 older brothers, and we span a decade. So we did have some intermingling towards each other. But sitting down and playing Risk with Johnny, my oldest brother, were some of the greatest memories that I have of my childhood because we would play for hours upon hours. World domination, what better?
It's funny. I've only played Risk one time, and it was here in this basement. It was me, my 2 younger brothers, and my stepdad. And you know, it was basically one of those things where, like, you know, in most of those games, the stepdad's like, you know, he knows all the tricks.
Yeah.
So he's just like wiping everyone off the board. But gets down to me and him, and it's literally like me and him just going back and forth on this like one country or whatever. Like all it took was like one person have a bad roll and one person have a good roll, and that person would win.
Right.
And I happened to have that good roll.
Nice.
It was like one of the few times I've won a game. It was like and I remember he was like, like, you know, like I should have won this, like, you know. But yeah, that was my one experience with that game.
And toy would be, my brother Johnny went to Interlochen. He did the whole Interlochen music studies there a couple times. They have like master's classes, like Yo-Yo Ma and Wynton Marsalis would put them on. Or I went to one later down the road. It was Rolf Schmedwig, he was the trumpet player for, I don't remember if it was Canadian Brass or the Boston Brass Quintet. But the first time he did that, I think I was maybe like 7 or 8. My parents brought me back this little bell, like color-coded bells, but they were real bells and like interjected into foam, so it kept them up and in this cute little carrying case. And I feel like that was my favorite toy to play with. I played those constantly throughout the next like 4 or 5 years. My son has them. They stay in his room. But I mean, he's got like a big pearl bell set now that he never pulls out the toy.
All right, 2 more. What's the worst job you've ever had? I guess I could say what's the worst job or gig you've ever had, but you know.
I've never had a bad gig. I've had gigs that didn't go accordingly to plan, but if I have a guitar in my hand or a trumpet in my hand and I'm in front of people, it's a good gig.
Yeah.
I'll even if I'm playing terribly, I'll never walk away and say that was a crap gig or that sucked. I will walk away with a sense of, you know, maybe I didn't I didn't entertain the audience as much as I should have, but it just gives me what to focus on next time to make sure that I do that. Worst job I've ever had. I left Maryland in 2000. I came off the road, and before I moved back to Maryland, when I came off the road, I packed up all my belongings and I moved to Arizona to be closer to my older son. And I couldn't find work out there. I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of trades that I've studied. I'm a metal fabricator. I'm certified in refrigeration. I have massive amounts of OSHA training. I'm born and raised on construction sites and fab shops. And I couldn't find work out there. So for the next 6 months, I was going to Walmart at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning and buying all of the stuff that was, 2 to 10 days past the sell-by date, and working for a woman that would make her own champion breed dog food. So I would pick up that stuff, then I would go back to her house, and I would spend all day grinding it up, putting it together, running it through the processors to make the dog food while I'm dehydrating duck tracheas, because those are great snacks for champion breed dogs. And then on the weekend, and that was barely paying my bills. So for like grocery money on the weekend and stuff like that, I was doing refrigeration work, and refrigeration work in Arizona is the worst. They're all in these little houses, like built onto the side of a house, and the only way to get to there is to go on the clay roofs or whatever that aren't very sturdy in 114 degree weather. No, I did not do very well there. I wound up moving back to Maryland 4 months after I was there. That's when everything started with Weatherly.
Nice.
But yeah, so that was the worst. Those 4 months were.
Yes. Doesn't
worst.
sound like a fun time.
Yeah, and I mean, every other job that I've had has always been. I mean, I'm a manager now, but I'm still in the construction field. I'm still out on construction sites unloading trucks or welding, cutting up metal with my guys, doing whatever. I've had some hard jobs that took a toll. I mean, I'm 40 and I've had 3 back surgeries already because of how badly I damaged my back installing kitchen equipment. But that's the worst.
All right.
Definitely Arizona.
All right, last question. If you could time travel, where and when would you go?
Late 1600s Russia.
Okay.
Dead Russian composers, man. That's my whole thing.
Go see them like perform.
I would be before them.
Oh yeah.
So I would just take their place.
Oh yeah.
I would go into late 1600s, and I would become Prokofiev or Shostakovich or Igor Stravinsky or Mussorgsky.
Nice.
any of those dead Russian composers, I would want to go back in time and replace.
Kind of gives me that vibe. Did you ever? I haven't seen it yet either, but that movie that came out where it was like about. Like if everyone forgot the Beatles existed, and then the guy was.
Oh yeah, that movie was awesome.
Yeah,
that movie was so good.
I've seen clips from it that looked amazing, and I do need to sit down and watch it. But
Let It Be. The name of it was a Beatles song. I can't remember what it is. Yeah, that movie was great.
Yeah, I loved the concept of it.
Yeah,
it
same
cool.
principle.
Yeah.
I would want to do it. But I would want to be a dead Russian composer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question for me. I think I'd want to go back, and I don't know, like go to Woodstock or like the original Woodstock, or go see like Pink Floyd in their prime when, so.
Shortly post Roger Waters.
Yeah.
Is when I really I would want to see Pink Floyd on the Pulse tour.
Nice.
When they did the Earl Theater or Royal Albert Hall, the whole Pulse live, like that would be a dream. I'd listen to that album at least once a week. It's always a reoccurring.
It's good album.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for doing this, and
yeah, man.
Yeah, we'll be in touch and keep me updated with what you got going on, man.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thanks again. I got to figure out this handshake situation.
Yeah.
I'm always everyone's bumping into the things. Follow the link in the video to check out more from Chris's group, Weatherly, including their podcast, The Weatherly Report, and other projects they have going on.